Welcome, and it's great to have you here on this next episode of my podcast. And I'm so glad today because we have the amazing Emma Lewry with us, who has so much experience and wisdom to share. So I'm going to launch straight in and say, welcome, Emma. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Good. And do you want to just tell people about you?
Absolutely. So I am a former head teacher. I was a head teacher of 3 different primary schools for about 10 years and a school improvement officer for a large multi-academy trust. I live in Devon with 2 children, a lovely husband and a dog. And I now work with schools offering reflective supervision and trauma-informed coaching and training, and also early years curriculum development. So I'm a busy bee.
You really are, my goodness. And why don't you share with us maybe the reason that I asked you to come on this podcast? Can you work it out?
Something about leaving headship, potentially.
Yeah. What was it like for you when you said to me when we were chatting, I was broken, but I didn't see it while I was in it?
Yeah, so I say now because a year ago when I left headship, I had some knowledge of where I was at in terms of needing to leave physically and emotionally. I had a lot of different symptoms, long list of things from migraines to mild panic attacks to very not present at home. I was physically there but not mentally there. I had huge amounts of stress from the job, so I knew to an extent that those things were having an impact on me, but I don't think I could recognize the level of burnout and the level of sort of trauma impact that the role, and probably over time the roles that I had in my 30s were having on me. So it's definitely taken some time. It's been a grieving process because I didn't want to necessarily leave headship. I've written some blogs and done a lot of sharing about the process for me, because there's great sadness in that. I wanted to be ahead, and there's still a bit of me that wants to be ahead. I attended my eldest's assembly this morning and sobbed through it because those are the bits that I love. There's so many incredible elements of school leadership that are just fantastic. But unfortunately, we are living in a system that is causing a huge amount of stress for leaders who are in schools, and I felt the brunt of that. And so, yes, it's definitely been a learning curve, a grieving process, and a learning process over the last year to see the big impact that it had on me. And ultimately, I had to leave, which is tricky.
Yeah, really sad, isn't it? Because, schools have lost an amazing, gifted head. And so, my part is to give strategies to leaders and teachers so that they don't burn out, that they spot early enough to see the warning signs and then put strategies in place. How would you suggest to people who were in your situation, maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years before now for you, what could you have spotted and what could you have done about it? What would have helped you?
I think the biggest element is about raising your own awareness, and to do that you need to stop and take time. There's probably a few different routes you can do it, coaching and supervision, and having someone, and for personally I think there has to be someone external to your school, to your organization, having a safe place where you can go to explore some of the impact that the role is having on you. And even you're right about how, we need to all be doing this. It's not about just when you are starting to notice some of those stress figures. I think everybody, all leaders need, and all teachers ideally need to have a level of supervision. All of the other sectors who are in the caring professions get it, and we don't. So that I'm really passionate about that. But I think the biggest thing is creating time and space to reflect and start to acknowledge where there are things that are challenging about your role, because we're not necessarily talking about solving it all. It's recognition, and it's a pause point, because then you can start to see where the bigger stresses are, where maybe you can make different decisions, where you can manage things, where maybe you need some help. So having an external person to help, I think, is the biggest thing. And alongside that, it is you knowing that you need that space and being able to recognize the value of creating that time. I think we've really normalized this idea, particularly in education, that it's go, go, go. You have to work all the hours God sends, and it is a stressful job, and then there's nothing that can be done about that. And there's so many leaders that put their own personal and emotional well-being completely to the side. they say things like, I don't have time for it, I can't. And I really would question people. And my husband used to say to me, do you have to do that? And I'd go, yeah, I have to. And in my head, I had to do those things. There was no option. And on reflection throughout my headships, I was able to reflect. At the end, I wasn't. I got to that point where I felt these things had to be done. But I think that biggest learning is that if we can actually really question ourselves, do we have to, or are we making that choice? Am I deciding to not go to the gym because I think I can't? Am I deciding to not go to bed early? I am. Ultimately, I'm not prioritizing the fact that I need time, I need space, I need to fill my own cup before I'm going to be able to be a good leader. And I think you need someone to help you with that, but also you can build up your own reflective practice and recognition. Journaling is fantastic, diarising space to do that work, and prioritising the things you actually need to fill you up.
Yeah, that's so helpful, isn't it? I spoke to a teacher recently. She's a leader in a local school, and I asked her if she would trial a week of the journal I've got coming out for teachers. And she messaged me back that evening. She said, Ro, I haven't had time to spend 30 seconds to look at the journal. And she says, this has been the biggest wake-up call for me, because something is so wrong in my life that I can't even take 2 lots of 30 seconds to do the journal. And actually, that was enough of a wake-up call, because she was aware enough to say, right, next week something's got to change. So then she did do it. And actually, she had some lovely results from it, which was very encouraging for me, but also quite transformational for her to start thinking, okay, how do I start to say no to things, and how do I put myself first in things? But I suppose there's a question that I think teachers might have for you as an ex-head would be, if I'm asked to do more and more and more things as a teacher, how can I say no? Because we don't often get the opportunity or the option to say, I can't do that. That is going to tip me over.
Yeah. I think that there is a challenge there, and sometimes we need to reframe the no, because sometimes it's about having phrases. And I think a lot of us as educators, we're people pleasers. We work in the caring sector. We just want to do the best job we can for our young people. Nobody wants to be going to work thinking, I'm not doing enough today. So that sits there as a real challenge in us needing to manage. And we don't want to feel selfish, like we're not supporting our team and working as hard as we can for our young people. I think a reframe around, even that language of, if you're asked to do something, being able to say, well, can I have a moment to think about that? Can I get back to you about that? Giving yourself some pause time, because no feels very negative. No feels, no, I'm not doing it. I'm choosing not to do that. Whereas if you can give yourself a little bit of space to say, I'm really interested, I'd really like to help, but can I have some time to figure out where I would fit that in? Or, give me a little bit of time to look at the diary, those sorts of things. That can give you enough space to actually reflect on whether you can or can't do that, what that would look like, what it would have an impact on. And I think also if we're talking about a teacher's sense, being able to have the confidence to go back to a leader and express to them some of the concerns you have around what you've been asked to do. Maybe it's because you're unsure about the logistics of what that would look like and the time that's taken, where that time would fit, but also to come up with some ideas about maybe if you were going to do it, what you need to stop doing, or if you were going to do it, a way of making it possible, making it strategic, maybe needing to tweak something else, so that you're really sharing that recognition. Okay, if I'm going to do that role for you, I might need to stop doing this, or can we reflect on how we do, I don't know, feedback and marking, because that's what's actually taking a lot of my time. I think a strategy that really helped me as a leader, but works for everyone, is exploring where your kind of energies and your time is taken up. So even just kind of mapping out across a day or across a week what you're doing, what different tasks you're doing, how long they're taking you, and also exploring kind of your energy levels and when you're productive. Can help you to marry up, okay, that feedback and marking or that policy writing is taking me ages, and then look at the time. Is it because I'm doing it at a time when actually my energy levels are really low? I'm like an evening worker, which I know doesn't really fit very well, and it's probably half of an issue with burnout, but I do some of my best work from like 8 p.m. onwards. But what I probably didn't do as a head was to say, okay, well, if I am working then, I probably need to gather back something else. So maybe I do need to work at 4 o'clock 2 days a week, to go and do something different, because I know, and I think that's what we don't necessarily do. We give all of our time into our work without having that shift of flexibility. And I guess because of school hours, it can be harder to do it. But sharing and talking about where is my time being taken up, and having some ideas about actually maybe we could do this differently. And if we think about the world of AI, there's a lot we can streamline currently. So yeah, some kind of positive thinking about, I can't do it like that, but how could I do it is helpful.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think two of the biggest suggestions I make to teachers who come to me, or I've said in the past actually, is number one, do the worst job first, because it relieves that burden of, oh, I can't do it. And most of the time it doesn't take as long as you think it's going to take, because you blow it up into this sort of catastrophizing nightmare in your head. But the other thing is, when you go and see maybe the head teacher, go with a solution. So if you're saying, I'm not sure, you ask me if I can do this, what about? And so you've come up with something so that it's not that no, but it's actually either an alternative or a way through, or something even better or different. And hopefully, people have got teams that they work with where the leaders are accessible, and it's not a top down, you will do this approach. And probably those leaders aren't listening to this anyway.
I think as a leader though, that's, I would have staff that might come to me with a suggestion and say, oh, sorry, I don't want to, make suggestions. And I'd be going, no, please do, because I can't hold all of that. And my specialism doesn't lie within everything. I'm not on the ground. I don't know how that's working. I need you to tell me. I was so grateful when people came to me, right, this is a problem, but what about this or this? And I'd go, great, do second option, brilliant. That is really fantastic when people are confident to come with it. And, but I would often have that apologetic, oh, I don't want to step on your toes. I'll be going, no, please, we're doing this together. And we need, ultimately, as I said, it's such a complex and challenging role in education at the moment. We need everyone to be searching for solutions and figuring out what we're doing, and being brave to say, actually, yes, I think we could do it in a better, more straightforward way. Yeah.
How awesome. So if people are listening to this and thinking, oh gosh, I can resonate with a bit of what Emma's saying about your migraines or your mild panic attacks, or, perhaps like what I was having, which was numbness in my joints, or what looked like minor heart attacks and that sort of thing. But everyone has such different burnout symptoms. It might be insomnia. It can be isolating yourself, whatever it is. What would be some strategies that you would recommend to people to try while they're in the midst of this really busy term? We're coming up towards Christmas, and what would be some strategies, that very practical things that they could try?
I mean, I've mentioned the recognition part of it. I think the kind of jotting down the symptoms is really helpful. That's definitely something for me that across the year, last year, as those symptoms started to go away, I then related them back. And so when you're in it, that's really hard to see. So I think just keeping a little diary of some of the things you're seeing is helpful, not necessarily in the moment to help you then, but it does help you build a bigger picture, and it does help you maybe to see some of those bigger impact elements. On the ground stuff, for me, it's I'm fascinated in this sort of trauma awareness, and this recognition that as leaders and teachers in schools, not only do we have our own trauma, because we all have it, we are frontline. We are hearing and seeing and experiencing secondary and vicarious trauma day in, day out. So that is having a big impact on us. So as I said, kind of being able to have that space, but learning some grounding strategies, I think, is really, really helpful. Being able to recognize how important it is and diarize it, even putting them in your calendar to say, right, or finding a time when you can go and do some breathing exercises, just keep your feet on the floor for a minute, recognize that you are being held up in this world. And, there's some really great resources out there, and things like, your journal, give people some strategies to take a moment. And like you said, sometimes it's just small. It's just saying, I'm going to take 1 minute to stop, to pause, to breathe, and to reflect and recognize my space, to give you some time, because I think we just go from thing to thing to thing, and we don't have that pause point. So it can be really little things. Again, I think people don't want to start a new big strategy, but if you're saying to them it's 30 seconds or it's 2 minutes of some breathing, some, listen, if it's you're struggling with insomnia, just finding an app you can listen to that helps you. Looking at one of the things I guess aligns with the energy aspect is just thinking about what does fill your cup, and have you actually planned that? Because we live in a world in education where we go from not doing anything for ourselves for 6 weeks, and then we try and cram it all into a week because we're like, oh my gosh, it's half term, I've got to see my friends, look after my family, do the batch cooking. Like, we then kind of try and have this up and down roller coaster of like all or nothing, as if 1 week of doing nice things is going to give us the energy to then do another 6 weeks. And that's just how we live. So I think trying to recognize how important it is, for me, seeing my friends, it might just be a cup of coffee for 1 hour on the way home from school. I mean, trying to actually logistically figure out how to meet people is very challenging at the moment because everyone's so busy, but it's thinking, what is it that is it a walk on the beach that really helps you? Is it seeing your friends? Is it having a soapy bath? Whatever is the thing that actually you recognize that fills my cup, put that in your diary, and do not feel guilty about doing it. It is so important. And actually talk about it and share, because I think, again, we diminish it and go, oh yes, and we also say, lucky me, oh, I'm so lucky I managed to find a little bit of time. No, you prioritized it, you're validating yourself, and you are going to recognize the impact of it and share that with your colleagues, because that will empower them to do so as well. Like, nobody needs to be the person that's like, oh, I was here till 7 o'clock, good old me. No, I left at 5, I went for a walk on the beach and I had a great evening. Share it and talk about it. I think that's so, when I see people sharing, and I follow some really amazing people on LinkedIn, CEOs of these incredible trusts, who outwardly share, like, I left work at this time and I went for a sea swim or something. And I think, oh, good, like, let's normalize how important and valuable it is to do these things. Yeah, I love that. I met a couple of secondary teachers recently. They were on my podcast and they introduced their life planners, where they look at the weeks ahead and they put their gym, they put their date night with their partner, they put meeting a coffee, and they put that in first, and then the work has to fit around what they want to do. So they leave school at a certain time, they stick with it. And actually they have maintained their productivity and their creativity much better than those of us like me who did 12-hour days minimum, and that was the norm. And you just start to become less productive. Yeah, but I think, and that's it, isn't it? It's recognizing where, because you're so exhausted and you haven't filled up that cup, actually things are going to take you hours and you're going to ruminate over them and worry about them. And if we can just normalize getting that balance. But yeah, I think you're so right. I do that now. I put in what's happening in my calendar, and to just, as I said, be proud of it. This is important stuff. This is important to mean that I am going to be the best teacher, the best leader that I can be. And it's definitely coming, isn't it? The work that you're doing and that others are doing is bringing that recognition to people. But we've certainly lived in a world for as long as I've been in education, that the more you work is the harder you work. And that's not true. No. And statistics show that. Research shows that. And actually, one of the you talked about tiny things, 30 seconds, 1 minute. And Brendan Bouchard, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a motivational speaker, and he talks about the power of, before you walk into a room, take a breath. And he says release, but I just take a breath and think, how do I want to present myself? What energy do I want to bring into the room? So as a teacher or leader, rather than going, you sort of flop into the room and go, oh my goodness, what a day. How is everybody? You go, right, how are we? Let's bring some energy into this session. The kids or the staff, they respond to the energy that you bring and the body language you bring and all of that. And actually that it can be 10, 20, 30 seconds. And as school staff, we can do that. And I've tried it in a really busy day in school, and it makes a massive difference. And I would say that, really tiny steps for people can have a massive difference. It doesn't need to be these big things, does it? No, little and often recognition is really important. Yeah, you're right. And we hold so much, don't we? So being able to bring that energy and recognize that, and then give yourself time to know that how much that takes out of you. When you give teachers time, okay, everyone goes, oh, you work 9 till 3. Well, we know we don't. But the amount of energy and on time that you are giving within that, you've then got to balance that on either side of the day. You've got to recognize, okay, well, in the morning, what helps you to be as kind of seamless into that energy as possible? And then at the end of the day, what things are you going to do to help, rather than just falling off the bandwagon, having to do all your marking and then rolling home at a ridiculously late time? Make those things happen. Yeah,
Oh, I love it. We could talk for so much longer, but I'm aware you're a busy lady. And I just want to say thank you, Emma, for giving us your time and your wisdom, and your experience of years in schools has just been invaluable. And if people want to be in contact with you, how would they find you?
Well, I do love a bit of LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just Emma Lewry there. I am on Instagram as Stories of School Leadership, which is my podcast, sharing the stories of school leaders. And then I've got a website as well, which is emmalewry.co.uk. So I get around. I do lots of different things. So yeah, come and say hello. I like connecting with people.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks, Emma. I will put the links into the podcast notes so people can find you. And I'm just so grateful for all you've shared today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I look forward to hearing and seeing you on the next podcast. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.